We are back. Welcome to the Leadership Launchpad Project. I'm Rob Kalwarowsky, and as always, the yang to my yin, Susan Hobson's here. Susan, how are you?
I'm excellent. I'm fired up. I'm ready for this interview. So let's go. Let's get this party started, shall we?
Absolutely. And I just wanted everyone that can see if you're watching on YouTube, you can see in the background, Mr. Winston, the Buddha nature himself, is behind me. And that's just a callback. Listen to the episode with Nikos. But a lot of folks have been Winston's a very good teacher of leadership. And I think for folks, I just want to show them, but also it's nice to have a grounding presence or a presence that's calm. And he obviously goes from 0 to 100 real quick. But it's also a lot of folks this week in our group calls, they've been noticing him just like this, sleeping in the background, and he's brought them some peace. And so I just wanted to leave that is for folks out there, curating your environment can be helpful for you as a leader in supporting the folks around you.
Love it. Dogs are such incredible teachers, aren't they?
All animals are. Absolutely. And if you go back a few weeks, right, like Nikos talks about learning incredible leadership from horses. And so just consider which animals are around you and what you can learn from them because they have incredible wisdom. And obviously with that, we have an incredible guest this week, a special guest. Tracie Sponenberg's with us. She's the Chief People Officer at the Granite Group. She's a founder of DisruptHR NH, HR Rebooted, HR Rebels, and HR on the House. Tracie, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you, Rob, and thank you, Susan, for having me. It's great to be here. And I don't have a dog, and we do have chickens. And they are super fun, and they bring a lot of joy and kind of remind us not to take things too seriously.
That's amazing. And so maybe before we get into you, can you tell us a leadership lesson you've learned from chickens?
Didn't see that.
Oh my goodness. I didn't see that coming. And I actually prefer not to have questions ahead of time because I don't overthink it, but, and I'm usually not at a loss for words, but this is a good one. So leadership lessons from chickens. Okay. So, I think, a lot of people get chickens because they have eggs, and that's a really nice benefit. And ours are 4 years old, which is, getting up there for chickens. And, they are very well taken care of. They're very happy. And, like I said before, they just remind you to kind of pause and reflect and not take things too seriously. It's actually fun to sit there and watch chickens run around the yard. It's something we try to do and pause and take a step back and reflect. I have no idea if I link that to leadership. Probably not, but it's still a good time.
It is the art type of leadership.
Yeah, I was just going to say, that's the most creative state that we'll ever know, right? Is like that childlike state.
Right.
So if you have animals that remind you of the benefits of getting playful, then I feel like the best leaders in the world, they do that too, don't they?
Right. Absolutely.
So Tracie, tell our audience a little bit about yourself and the mission that you're on out in the world of leadership.
Sure. So I'm probably one of these weird people that knew what I wanted to do really early. That's not strange. What's strange is that I wanted to get into the world of HR, I think. So you find two types of people. There are few people like me that grew up in the world of HR, and then there are people who stumbled in, and most people seem to stumble in. But I knew when I was 16, 17, this is what I wanted to do, kind of combine my love of business and people. And I studied psychology in undergraduate. So it kind of meshed that all together. And lo and behold, 25 plus years later, I'm still doing this really great work. And now for the past almost 8 years, I've worked for the Granite Group, and we're a wholesale distributor located in the Northeast of the US. And we've got almost 60 locations, almost 800 people. And our whole team's purpose is to co-create an incredible individual people experience. And so it's really fun to be able to do that work, and really challenging, but really gratifying. And, on the side, I like to challenge myself, or at least I have in the past several years. And so where I don't see something that I may need or that others may need, I try to create it. So HR Rebooted and HR in the House, those were co-created. So was DisruptHR New Hampshire, just bringing, I don't want to say disruption, but shaking up the traditional notion of HR, which is, people who say no, and compliance police and the party planners. We're much different than that.
And what is it now today? That's because but it's new terminology, right? People experience, and I have a lot of leaders that come to me asking about that, because they have HR, but they're curious. Do I need to have that too? Do I need to have? Is there a difference between people officer and HR officer? So just help our audience plug into something.
Yeah. I think it matters less what you're called, unless you're called human capital. I don't like that. It matters less what you're called and more what you do. And we evolved several years to be a people team instead of an HR team. And it wasn't a big announcement. Hey, here we are. It was more subtle than that, because we really felt like that reflected us and our team better, right? When you think of humans, that's great, but resources, it just kind of put people into a box that over time just, I think, needed to change. And so you saw it changing maybe 10 years ago in the tech field, and now you're seeing hospitals and construction companies and more companies like that, and companies in the distribution space like us being people officers, chief people officers. But yes, I do get asked that quite a bit. And, I really look at the traditional notion of HR, like I said, the kind of the compliance police. I was very traditional for many, 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 many years, and just kind of came in, did my job, did what the company told me to do, laid off or terminated people kind of dispassionately, because that's what I was told to do, right? I just executed. And that's the way it was. That's the way it was for me. And shamefully, that I didn't really think too much about it. In the past, dozen or so years, as I've evolved, and my notion of what HR does has evolved a little slower than some, a little faster than some, a lot faster than some. But really, I've evolved to be fiercely people first. And when you put your people first, you're putting the business first. So the best businesses and the best leaders put their people out there first before anything else, before profits, before company. That will follow. Now, that sounds simplified. It is not that easy at all, because people have to perform and people have to, actually do things. You can't just have this happy, smiley workplace where everybody's just sitting around saying, yeah, we're people first. But when you trust your people, when you put them first, when you take into account their well-being, then your company is going to be more successful.
I think your transition and what you're talking about is a lot like the chickens, right? You said that people get chickens because of the eggs. And then you evolve to start seeing them as their own beings, and how interesting and special each chicken is. And that doesn't mean they don't lay eggs still, but it changes your relation to them. And maybe
I love it.
Talk about, yeah, there you go. Now you have an answer to a question that probably only I will ever ask you.
I hope so. I don't know if I'll remember this. It's a good answer.
But maybe can you talk a little bit about that transition? Like you were talking about how you went from HR as it used to be to HR and people centric in the way now. Like how was that transition for you and how did you start to change to the new way?
Yeah, I think I didn't think about it at the time. I know I didn't think about it at the time because it's in more recent years I was introduced to the term. But what I was really doing was developing a growth mindset. So I had a really fixed mindset. I'm an introvert, so I can't do this. The company tells me to do this, so I've got to do this. I can't question things. I can't do this. I can't do that. I just was living in that. Things were happening to me. I wasn't making things happen. I was, really probably deeply unhappy looking back at it and just kind of walking through life. And then I had a shift that evolved over time, but pretty about 10 or 12 years ago, pretty acutely then I just kind of looked at myself and didn't like what I saw and changed a bunch of things, everything from my health to how I approach the world to how I approach work, and just developed that growth mindset, and something that I'm still working at really every single day, but tried to, instead of going, here's how I term it. So instead of going, that person's doing that thing, why do they get to do that? I would go, okay, that person's doing that thing. If I want to do that thing, I can do that thing. Or if I want to, have this happen to me, instead of getting angry about something, I wasn't doing anything about it, then I could do something about it. So it was just a mindset shift that was small over time, but incredibly powerful for me. And that transformed everything. That allowed me to transform myself, that helped transform and unlock things for me. I would never, ever be sitting here and having a conversation like this had I not done that.
What inspired you to change your mindset like that? Since we're mindset experts here at the Leadership Launchpad Project, we got to dig into this one, Tracie.
Yeah. You're going to ask me a question I can't answer because I know you're all neuropsychology, and I'm going to just drag some books. So yeah,
I'm just curious, where was the influence, right? Because I'm wondering, like, once you started to become a leader, did you receive that type of training, perhaps, or was it something that you experienced outside the context of work that inspired you?
I think it was a little bit of both. So for the first half plus of my career, I was an individual contributor, or for the first few years, I was an individual contributor, and then I was an HR leader, but a department of one. So it was around probably about a dozen years ago that I went from a department of one to having 40 direct reports. 40 direct reports. So I got thrown into a situation where I had to learn to be a leader really, really fast. Really fast. And not only that, it was a law firm, but navigate the complex relationships between lawyers and their assistants, and lawyers and each other, and the management committee, and all of that. So it was a really difficult role. Really difficult role. I learned that I was really good at it, but I hated it. So that was the first time I really learned that you can be really good at something that I shouldn't say I hated it. I did get a lot out of it. I met a lot of wonderful people, but it wasn't for me. Mm-hmm. So I learned that you could be great at something or really good at something and not enjoy it. And so, that was kind of the first step toward my leadership evolution. And, a few years before that, I had got divorced and get remarried. So that's always a great opportunity to look at your life and how you're living it. And so I was at a point in my life where I was happy personally, or was in a situation personally that was really well suited to me. And so, kind of that leadership converged with me being in a situation where I was happy, but I wanted to be happier. I wanted to be happier with myself. So, for me, that was exercising and eating better and losing a little weight and just looking at everything. So it all kind of converged around the same time over the course of a few years.
And would you say having a growth mindset has increased or enhanced your leadership capacity?
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. Absolutely.
In which ways?
Yeah, I am open to things in ways that I wouldn't have been before. And I still, like, this has happened several times, even in the past few years, where I kind of find myself slipping back into, no, I can't do that, or kind of turtling into my own little hole. But I think that, I just approach things now in a completely different way. I think the biggest part of that growth mindset is that, for me anyway, is continuous learning. So I'm always, 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 always learning. And I'm never like I was. It's like, I'm good. I don't need to know. I don't need to know any more about this. Right. Now I'm always learning, and I'm always approaching myself as a project that's ever evolving. And if I wasn't doing that, I don't think I'd be any sort of leader. And I'm constantly trying to improve on my leadership ability, because I was a terrible leader for a long time. And yeah, so I think that's one part of it. That continuous learning is super important to me.
We're curious because we look at this, this is the growth mindset.
Yeah.
Versus the fixed mindset is a very fundamental piece of our baseline program, the Leadership Launchpad program that we do with our leadership teams. And we're also very aware of the fact that most of those leaders aren't even getting that type of training till they're in their 40s, right? So, to us, we're just trying to get the blind spot here.
Yeah. No, and I didn't either. And I think for me, honestly, and so I turned 50 last year, and it wasn't until I hit 40, really, that was one of the catalysts. And I think for me, the older I got, the less I cared what other people think. And I think that's pretty common as we age, right? Mm-hmm. So when you're in your 20s and 30s, and it's really easy to buy into, oh my gosh, this person thinks this or that. So as I get older and just had more experience, the things like that mattered less. So for me, that helped a lot. And I think when I see just really confident people, I know a young woman in her 20s who's just out there just changing the world. And I see our kids who are all Gen Z, who are just confident. I think, first of all, we did a really nice job. And second of all, I think that, I wish I had that in my 20s and 30s even. I wish I had that. So I see, hopefully, I see the world changing, but I think that there's definitely a need for the work that you do. And there's definitely a gap there. I'm hopeful that by the time our, 24-year-old gets to be a little bit older, that he'll, all of our kids are just approaching work in a different way. I think maybe that's because, as parents, Gen X parents, we corrected the mistakes that we, that we made in the workplace, and tried to teach our kids something different.
So I love this, because a lot of our leaders are trying to understand, how do we deal with the Gen Zs that are coming into the workplace? So obviously this is something that you're very well versed in. So how are they different, or how should folks approach these new Gen Zs that are coming in?
So I don't always love to group people into buckets. And we did that a lot with millennials. I can't tell you, when I talked to my managers like 5 years ago, oh, I don't know what to do about millennials. Millennials, we heard so much about that. And I was like, dude, you are a millennial, but I'm an older one. And so, we heard a lot about that. You don't hear as much about that. At least we don't with Gen Zs, because I do think this group is different. And I do think that these kids who are in their, early 20s and younger, just entering into the workplace, they're changing the world of work in a really great way, maybe in a way that's scary for employers, but in a really great way that's really forcing us to look at, how we do business and how we work with people. So they're coming in going, you know what, I'm not going to work 70 hours a week. I saw what my parents did. I'm not going to do that. I want work-life balance. They're coming in demanding things like pay equity, which is awesome. They're coming in and they're talking about their salaries, which is completely legal, with their friends. And they're cracking open the need for us to discuss that and share things like salary bands. And they're very openly talking about things like mental health and really forcing us to have these discussions. And they also want regular feedback, and not only want it, but they need it. So, there's a lot of things, but those are things that we're observing. And I think it's been somewhat of a shift for our managers, but I think more than any other generation that I've seen in the workplace, this generation is really driving change in such a positive way. And I'm so excited to see these folks get into leadership roles in the next, 5 years plus, and really see what they can do. And of course, this is, all sorts of asterisks. This is not everyone. This is an overgeneralization. But having had this experience with our kids and our new people coming into our organization, I'm really optimistic about the future of work.
Me too. Yeah. I remember I had my 11-year-old daughter come home with a pamphlet on the growth versus fixed mindset. She's in grade 6. I'm like,
oh, awesome.
This is happening in grade 6. Yes, this world is changing. We are starting to get the memo. You're right. It's very inspiring, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's really inspiring. And, at the same time, my husband and I had this conversation, I think last week, like they're facing pressures that we didn't face, so we had this conversation about, okay, the internet, are we better off with it or without it? We didn't grow up with it. And I said,
right,
without it, would we have been right? And so the pressure, and I think of, if I was in college and social media was around, that wouldn't have been a good thing, right? Like the pressure that these kids are facing now, and, to see them navigating with little bumps and bruises here and there, but with grace and is really incredible, because it is so much different. And I think so much harder right now to grow up, so much harder.
Hence the need for the growth mindset.
Yes.
Yeah. I just wanted to ask you, Tracie, like a lot of folks are suggesting reverse mentorship, where the older leaders are getting support from the Gen Zs about, how to navigate certain challenges, whether that's the technological advancements of like Chat GPT or whatever. Like, how would you set that up, or how do you recommend folks set those type of mentorship opportunities up?
So whenever we go through strategic planning, which we do every few years and kind of update it every year, mentorship comes up. And we've resisted having a formal program because it happens very naturally in our organization. And formal mentorships can be really, really great. But I think for us, what happens is exactly what you talked about. So we hire a lot of people either just out of college or just out of trade school now coming in and learning our business. It's a very complex business. It takes a lot of time. So they're almost always partnered with somebody who's got probably decades of experience in our industry. And they're coming in and learning our industry from them. And then those folks are learning just as much, if not more, from them. And, in my mentor relationships, my mentees, I learn more from them, I think, than they do from me. And so I don't look at it as this, it doesn't have to be this really formal program. I think if you look at it as a partnership, and you open those lines of communication and you create an environment of trust and psychological safety, you're going to have those relationships develop that will be mutually beneficial.
I love it. The key words, trust and psych safety. Here we go.
Yep.
So let's talk about the community aspect of this, because this is what we talked about at the start of the year, right?
Yeah.
The very first show, we were saying, what do we predict is going to be the biggest theme for 2023? And you're talking about the importance of that, right, aspect. And I think that this is something that we're so seeing companies starting to move in the direction of understanding more and more. But I know Rob mentioned to me that he was speaking to you on the sidelines about your involvement in some communities that were directed towards changing the world and how impactful that had been for you. So tell us a little bit about that experience and what that was all about that he was referencing.
Yeah. So I mentioned at the kind of very beginning that I try to create things if I see a gap, and I need that because since I've had that kind of constant need to learn and develop that growth mindset, I really need to just keep iterating. And for a long time, long time, I didn't network. I really, I'd go to the occasional local HR group, and I actually ran when I was in my late 20s, ran an HR group locally. But I'd like go into the meeting, for a little bit, then leave and not do any of the networking. And so because it was hard for me and I assumed I couldn't do it. So as I developed that mindset and my continuous learning developed, I just saw a need to kind of find people who thought about the world of work like I did. And so I met my friend, Michelle, when I brought her in to interview for my job when I left my last role. And we became really great friends, and we founded HR Rebooted together, which is, geared toward, we haven't done much in the past couple of years, but geared toward changing the world of work. We had a podcast and we were doing these little videos and just kind of chipping away at the traditional notion of HR. And with Michelle also, we prior to that, a couple years, probably like 2016, 2017, we, realized there was, we were not finding people in our area, in our geographic area, that thought about the world of work like we did and really thought about leading people first. So we got together with about 8 or 10 people locally that we knew that did. And so we'd get together once a month for lunch and kind of, look at different, we'd have a topic of the month, right? Topic of whatever it was at the time, whatever the world of work was challenging. So we just helped each other. And then come COVID time, that turned to Zooms and weekly or more frequent Zooms where we all shared information. We all supported each other. And when I talk about, truly my community helped save me through that time, it is 100% true because it became part information and kind of part support group. And we kept that going for, I think I went every week for almost 2 years. And so we kept that going and we're still doing it. We have a group now on LinkedIn, that same group of 900 people, and, a couple dozen to a couple dozen get together every week on a topic of the week and just kind of explore that. And then I, got into some other things, and I, a few years ago started getting involved in speaking, and I did some blogging, and I met people that have since become such dear, dear friends that I never would have done if I hadn't developed that growth mindset.
So important, especially now that a lot of us are working from home, right? Is like that we're understanding that we as human beings are social creatures, and that social connection is a need, not a want, right? But, I think it's good because it's putting emphasis on coming out of a pandemic full of literal isolations. I feel like we're reminded of we need to be proactive about going and creating those communities with like-minded people, especially if we're working from home.
Right. And a lot of people don't, and I didn't, and that's okay. But it's, there's something for everyone, truly. There's so many companies right now, too, that are building, so many different vendors in the HR space that are building really incredible communities and bringing people together in different ways. And there's truly something for everybody, no matter who you are out there.
Love it.
I love that. And it's something that's been obviously on our minds a lot recently. And don't worry, folks, we're making something happen. Actually, by something, we mean a few things. So we're working on it too. I guess, Tracie, where I'd like you to kind of go a bit deeper for us is if you had one thing that you could tell our community of leaders, what would that be?
So, jumping back into the theme of community, leadership can be lonely, whether you're an HR leader like me or marketing or IT or wherever, right? Leadership can be lonely. So community can be a place where you feel less lonely, whether that's a virtual community, whether that's a physical community. That's when I say there's something for everyone. Truly, some people may be physically isolated and not able to get out. And there are great virtual communities, or, some people, I have some friends that are just have found this community over the past few years and are constantly going out in person and seeing people. And I do kind of a hybrid mixture of both. And truly, community can be everything to you. It really can help you solve some problems that you're having with work, be a support system, work or personally, or with your life, which is blending of a little bit of everything. And they can really uplift you. If you find the right communities, it can really uplift you. And not only that, but help you find a new job, challenge yourself in different ways. If you want a side gig, help you find that. So truly transformative for me.
Love that.
Amazing.
And then we got to pull out the big guns before we let you go, Tracie. What do you want your legacy to be with all this fabulous work you're doing in disrupting HR?
I did this thing for a company a couple of years ago where I had this quote, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was for 2020. And I wanted 2020 to be that year, and I still haven't really seen it. And I'll sort of paraphrase it. So if something happens to me tomorrow, I hope that I left largely HR professionals. I'm hyper focused on HR professionals because I was that, right? I want HR professionals to really see the good work that they do every day. And you can extrapolate that and extend that to leadership, right? I want leaders to see the good work that they do every day, and to recognize in themselves something of extreme value to the world of work and to the world in general. So if I leave a legacy of, getting a couple of people to realize their impact in the world, it takes almost nothing to impact the world. It takes you impacting one person, right? If I can leave that legacy, I'd be really, really happy.
I love that. And it's something that we all struggle with, but it's an incredible mission to be on. And it's incredible to have you here, Tracie, to talk about it. And for folks out there, so Tracie Sponenberg, she's the Chief People Officer at the Granite Group. You can check them out, thegranitegroup.com. We've also dropped Tracie's LinkedIn in the podcast notes. Tracie, is there anywhere else you want folks to find you?
Yeah, I think I'm the only Tracie Sponenberg on LinkedIn. If I'm not, I think there's a problem because I'm pretty sure there's no other Tracie Sponenberg. But on social channels, I'm at Tracie Spon on Twitter and Instagram and Peloton, and not yet on TikTok. That's maybe a 2024 goal for me. That's one. You got to have something that scares you that you're afraid to get involved in, and that's that for me.
I haven't dipped my toe in, but Susan has, so that's another story.
I don't know if I have that kind of time yet either, because I do the old people TikTok, which is the Facebook Reels, so you can get sucked into those pretty quickly. Yeah,
all the same. That's the all the same on all these different platforms. YouTube even has Reels.
Yep. Yeah. Wow. All right. Well, this was fun. Thank you so much.
It's a whole new world out there, like you're just saying, with the technology, eh? And
it is.
Not only impacting children, but impacting our businesses.
For sure. Yeah, for sure.
A whole other episode. Right, Rob?
Yep.
Absolutely. And for everyone out there, obviously, please hit subscribe to Leadership Launchpad Project podcast on your favorite podcast platform. And if you found value from this episode, share it with any leaders in your life. And also, please leave us a rating and review. And for all things leadership development, high performance, mindset coaching, conflict management, EQ, and more, head on over to elitehighperformance.com for all of that. Susan, is there anything you'd like to leave our listeners with today?
Love it. I love hearing from the HR expert herself, right? If your business strategy is not people first, what are you doing? We got this whole generation of Gen Zs coming up that are requiring it. So if you don't have it, guess what? You're not going to be able to retain that top talent. So I love the reinforcement. This is the case we've been trying to make here. the Leadership Launchpad project. So thank you for helping us reinforce it, Tracie.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Rob and Susan. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And for me, I think I want to take the opportunity to acknowledge and reiterate the power of self-leadership. And this is the decision that Tracie made when she started to see how she could design and create and decide the life she wants to live. And wow, what a change. And that for me, I mean, that's why I'm here in Costa Rica, right? And that's why Susan runs Elite. And there's so many examples of how going on your own mindset and leadership journey leads to incredible results that we never thought possible. And even having this conversation would have never been possible had the three of us not gone on our own journeys. And so get out there, start walking the path. Tracie, thank you so much for joining us now out of the snowstorm and just in a rainstorm.
Finally, now it's beautiful out today. So we've got a week of rain ahead. So I'm sure I don't even want to know what it's like in Costa Rica. So I don't even tell me. I can see it's beautiful. I can see it's beautiful through the windows. So it was lovely to be with both of you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Susan. As always, thank you. Everyone listening, thank you. And we'll see you all next week.
Bye, everyone.